In the years of Risk of Rain 2 that I've had the privilege to be a part of, I've met a concerning amount of people that dislike the artifact of command. They say it makes the game too easy, but in my opinion, that just isn't the point. Hi, I'm Socks, right in the middle of your screen, and now I'm on the left of your screen. Isn't that fun? And in my opinion, the point of the artifact of command is not to make your runs easier, but instead to experiment with making builds with the items we have available to us. The pure freedom given by the artifact of command can be overwhelming to some players, so I'm here to point you in the right direction towards some really fun and unique build ideas that I've found over the years. I'm trying to shorten my intros a bit, so let's just get into the video already, shall we? Our first build of the video is actually two builds that are similar enough that I'm going to talk about them in the same entry. The razor wire often finds itself as a background item in your builds, but what if we made it the focal point? By combining the razor wire with a predictable, self-damaging ability like Seeker's Sojourn or the Hellfire Tincture, we can rapidly proc the razor wire, in turn granting us some very powerful damage over a large area. By grabbing a bunch of repulsion armor plates, we can ensure that we take a lot less damage than our enemies, and also stay in the Sojourn ability for longer. As for which of these is better, I think the Hellfire Tincture is more consistent and effective, as unlike Sojourn, it will not increase in damage over time, and you can use it for as long as you want. On top of this, the Hellfire Tincture's damage is nothing to scoff at, making you incredibly powerful in the close range. Throw in some focus crystals or bleed, and your damage per individual target will greatly increase as well. Seeker's Sojourn does allow you to stay safer for longer, however, since you cannot take damage while in the ability. Regardless, this is a really powerful and fun build to use, and I highly recommend you try it in your own runs. Remember to stock up on all the repulsion armor plates and planulas you can, so that you don't hurt yourself too much with the self-damaging abilities. Our second build is one I've tried multiple times to varying degrees of success. The Genesis Loop is often considered one of the worst items in the game, but in the right conditions it can be incredibly powerful. The reason it is considered to be bad is simply because you have to put yourself in danger to use it. But there's one survivor who can sidestep this downside, and that is Engineer. By giving our walking turrets a Genesis Loop, some defensive items, and a lot of attack speed, we can turn them into our own little portable explosions. It can be difficult to pull off consistently, but it's still incredibly powerful, especially for when you need to clear a large group of enemies at once. The attack speed items will make the explosion faster, so it's definitely worth building into that as well. This next build comes from Discord member and fellow YouTuber Sneck. I played hide and seek with him. You should go check it out. Ever wanted to watch the apocalypse but not be a part of it? No? Well, too bad, because that's just what this build does. The glowing meteorite is one of the more chaotic items in the game, creating a meteor shower that deals damage to enemies, but also you and your allies. It's usually just a gimmick, but it can be one of the most powerful items in the game if you're able to dodge the meteors well enough. The easiest way to do this is to just play as Artificer and fly over the explosions. Since the explosions are centered on the ground and don't actually fall from the sky, you are completely immune to all of the meteors that don't target you directly, as they can still land on your head. Throw in a lot of defensive items and a few lysate cells, and you get to watch as every other enemy gets destroyed, while you stay safe and sound up above them all in the sky. If you want to push it to its absolute limits, you can stack a bunch of fuel cells and Gestures of the Drowned to cause even more chaos. However, do be careful, as you will need to touch the ground sometimes in order to grab items and interact with things. Also, flying enemies will be immune to most of the explosions as well, so it's recommended that you build into things like the Unstable Tesla Coil and Little Disciple, as they can help with all the wisps that might otherwise be hard to see. The Frost Relic is an item that I think is one of the most underrated in the game. 1200% damage per second is incredibly strong, and because it activates on kill, it is very easy to control. The only problem with the item is that you need to be near the enemies to actually get any value out of it. Well, if we take a trip to the Bazaar Between Time, we can grab ourselves some Strides of Heresies to make it so that we can stay completely invulnerable as we get up close and personal to the enemies. I highly recommend you pick up a Forgive Me Please as well, since you can activate it in Shadowfade and it will greatly increase the uptime of the Frost Relic. It will also allow you to use it during the Mithrix fight, where you can't get any kills since it's only him. This build can take a while to get off its feet, but once it does, it is one of the strongest in the game. This next build creates the ultimate purgatory of having money, unlimited money, but no money. The crowdfunder is often cast aside by newer players as one of the weaker equipments in the game. After all, it takes your money, and you need that. Well, you finally can, by using it in conjunction with the Brittle Crown. This way, you won't ever have to worry about wasting money, as hits from the crowdfunder will pay for themselves, and this allows you to use the crowdfunder a lot more often. Combine this with a bunch of proccable items like the ATG missile launcher and sticky bomb, and an enemy that so much as brushes up against your crosshair will simply be deleted. Just remember to turn off the crowdfunder when there are no other enemies around, or else you will actually just lose money. This next build idea comes from somebody in the Discord. There is an interesting quirk with the Brilliant Behemoth where, while it has no proc coefficient and cannot proc anything on its own, if you have enough luck and are able to proc something with another attack, anything else in the Brilliant Behemoth's explosion will be affected by that as well. This might sound complicated, but what it means is that if you have a lot of Brilliant Behemoths and a lot of Lost Seer's lenses, you are able to instantly kill anything caught in the explosions. This build takes a while to get to its strongest form, but once it does, it is incredibly powerful, and can even insta-kill bosses if you shoot another enemy and get them caught in the explosion. Finally, a build that lets me play the game while also not really playing the game. Both the Nukahana's Opinion and Bustling Fungus are items that people usually don't care for since they aren't super powerful. If we put them together, though, we can create a very powerful build. Do this on Engineer, and your turrets will constantly have the Bungus activated, making it much easier to get value out of the Nukahana's Opinion. Make sure to combine this with lots of defensive items too, so that your turrets can stay alive longer, especially when placed next to bosses. Items like the Aegis, Rejuvenation Rack, and Warped Echo can keep your turrets alive and help them dish out more damage with the healing they grant. If you get powerful enough, you can eventually just AFK with this build, which makes me feel extra powerful. This next build idea comes from Redline in the Discord. Of all the items we have available to us in the game, the Fuel Array is the only one that is truly useless. Yes, we need it to unlock Rex in the Abyssal Depths, but other than that, literally all it does is execute you once you drop below 50% health. However, this happens in a very grandiose explosion, which means that if we were able to somehow survive the blasts, we can use the attack to our advantage. By playing Engineer, we can actually give our turrets the Fuel Array as well, literally turning them into walking bombs. As fun as this build sounds, it unfortunately has a lot of drawbacks. The first being that you have to obviously carry the Fuel Array as well if you want your turrets to have it, effectively halving your health. You can help this by getting a bunch of defensive items, but that also means it will be harder for the enemies to get your turrets to a low enough HP to actually explode. Also, when the Fuel Array explodes, it deals damage to all entities in its radius, meaning if you are too close to your turrets when they explode, their explosions will damage you, which usually is enough to detonate your own Fuel Array. Overall, I really see this as more of a challenge build than the rest of the ideas in the video, but if you really want to make the Fuel Array work, this is how you can go about doing that. One of the most famous glitches that has been kept in the game is the weird interaction that exists between the Blast Shower and Kajaro and Renault's bans. For those of you who don't know, the cooldown of the bans is actually considered a debuff, meaning that the Blast Shower can cleanse it, in turn allowing you to use the bans a lot more than intended. Combine this with a bunch of fuel cells and gestures on a high single target damage survivor like Railgunner or Loader, and you will be proccing bans on virtually every hit. If you want a build that will turn the game into a point-and-click adventure, this is the way to go about it. The Blast Shower will also cleanse the Safer Spaces cooldown as well, so if you want to throw that into your build, you can. This next idea is more of a gimmick idea that I had than it is a real build, but I still think it's a fun one. The idea is simple: to combine the consistent and unavoidable damage of Loader's Pylon with the stunning feature of the Breaching Fin. When used correctly, this can hold a large group of enemies relatively still and defenseless in the air while you use your other abilities to pick them off. Is this build strong? No, not really, but I still like that this interaction exists because, if nothing else, it's funny to watch. And no, before you ask, the Blast Shower does not reset the cooldown of the Breaching Fin, even if I think it should. I now want to step away from our main builds to talk about some honorable mentions. Builds that are still fun, but are either too well known or too easy to make to bother mentioning in their own section. So let's just get into it. The Empathy Cores plus Spare Drone Parts combo is an absolute classic that I recommend any player try out at least once in their time with Risk of Rain 2. Once it gets off its feet, it can effectively play the game for you, as the Empathy Cores will be dealing massive amounts of damage, which is only boosted by how many allies you can find. This is one of the only times where I recommend you take a Happiest Mask, as it can make more allies for your Empathy Cores to use. The Pocket ICBM adds 2 more missiles per instance of missile on the first stack of the missile that you pick up.
Mother, why in God's name would you write that sentence into the script?
Shut up.
Yes, mother.
What you might not know, however, is that this also works with the bundle of fireworks. If we grab ourselves a remote caffeinator, we can gain a portable interact point that lets us proc an instance of fireworks whenever we want. This build is comically powerful for just being 2 items, and I love it. It's time to play the game on easy mode. If there were a mode below Drizzle, this would be it. The classic burn build is one I think everyone needs to try at least once, since it really is one of the strongest in the game, and one you don't even really need command for. Gasolines, molten perforators, especially the ignition tank, all on Chef or Artificer, and the game is an absolute breeze. The FMP with just any on-kill items makes for one of the most powerful builds in the game. It also makes on-kill items far more powerful on their own. Gore's Tome gives you infinite money. Ceremonial Dagger plays the game for you. Chronic Expansion never shuts off, and it's just a fun time all around. Be sure to take the Soulbound Catalyst and a Gesture of the Drowned to keep it constantly active. And finally, we have the classic Shimp and Plute combo. One procs the other, and the other procs the one. They feed off each other, in turn creating some of the highest single target damage of any item build in the game. Throw in some other proccable items, and congratulations, you have entered the sanctuary that is Proc Heaven. That's going to do it for the honorable mentions segment of the video. I just felt like we might as well throw these in here since I'd get a billion comments if I didn't mention them. Anyways, let us continue into our final entry. Okay, so it goes without saying for Risk of Rain 2, but major flashing lights warning for this last entry. I'm not joking. Regular fans of this channel will recognize this build instantly, as I bring it up approximately once every hour I am alive. For those of you who don't know, if you are able to deal damage to yourself, particularly with the Hellfire Tincture, you can proc the Void Sent Flame on your body, turning you into a walking ball of death. This will only happen when you are at or above 100% health, meaning we have to stack a bunch of barrier items to stay above that breakpoint. The best way to go about this is by getting at least 2 to 3 Aegises. Or is it Agi? Aegises? And a few Planulas to make it so that the Hellfire Tincture will actually heal you. Combine all this with some multiplicative damage scaling, and any enemy that so much as thinks about coming near you will quickly regret that decision. I like to use this build on close-range survivors like Mercenary and particularly Loader, as her Scrap Barrier passive allows you to stay in combat for a longer period of time. This is easily one of the most fun builds in the game, and I do hope you enjoy using it in your own command runs, as there's no way in hell you are naturally coming across a Voidsent Flame, Planula, and Aegis in a single run. And that's going to do it for this video on new build ideas that you can use with the Artifact of Command. What are your favorite builds to use? If there are enough I haven't seen before, I'll make a second episode of this video to spread the word about all the wonderful builds you can use in Risk of Rain 2. If you did enjoy this video, I urge you to subscribe, as it will help me out a ton. Thank you to our wonderful members who help make videos like these possible, and thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.